Murdered, a podcast. I'm your host, AB. And this week on Mama Murdered, a podcast, we're jumping into part 3 of the Cleveland 3 abduction of Michelle Knight, Amanda Berry, and Gina DeJesus. So, if you haven't already, then I would highly suggest going back and listening to the first 2 parts of this case, or else this episode may not make a whole lot of sense to you. Last week on part 2, I left you hanging on Michelle seeing on the small TV that Castro had given her that Amanda Berry had been reported missing. And she had also seen on the news on that small TV that Amanda had last been seen super close by to where Castro's house was. Michelle had been suspicious that Castro had also been the one that had taken Amanda Berry, but she knew for sure after she heard the same music blasting from the basement. We also went over a lot of the first few months that Michelle was in Castro's house of hell, and with all that being said, and without further ado, let's get it. So after Michelle heard that same salsa music blaring from the basement, she was damn near positive that Castro had Amanda chained in the basement against that same big pole. But it was sometime shortly after Michelle made this realization that Castro came into the room that he was keeping Michelle in, and he told Michelle that he wanted to introduce her to someone else that he had brought to the house. Michelle basically just told Castro that she knew that he had been the one that had taken Amanda Berry and that she had seen Amanda's face all over the news. And Castro was kind of quiet for a minute, just kind of looking at Michelle. And then he told Michelle that it wasn't Amanda Berry before he walked out of the room that he kept Michelle in. And I'm not sure why he would lie to Michelle. I mean, it's not really like she had an option to tell someone that she suspected him. But he's also a blubbering idiot, so this tracks. Now, it was the very next day after Castro told Michelle that he wanted to introduce her to someone that Castro moved Michelle from the blue room that she had been in since Castro had taken her out of the basement, and Michelle was then walked back into the pink room where her nightmare had first begun. After Castro got Michelle moved from the blue room back to the pink room, he took the small color TV that he had given Michelle, and in place of that TV, Castro brought in an even smaller TV that was in black and white with the 2 bunny ear antennas. This smaller black and white TV that Castro had put in the pink room with Michelle was definitely a downgrade from her small color TV. The volume barely worked on this black and white TV, and it didn't pick up many channels. And when Michelle tried flipping through the channels, she realized that this small black and white TV barely worked at all. And she told Castro as much. But he just kind of shrugged and told Michelle to deal with it because Amanda would be using the TV that Michelle had been using. So this was just more confirmation for Michelle that Castro did, in fact, have Amanda in that house somewhere. Why else would he need to give Amanda a TV if she wasn't also being held there against her will? Exactly. He wouldn't. And the very next day after Michelle was given this black and white TV with the bunny ears, Castro came into the pink room where he had Michelle and he unlocked the chains that were wrapped around her body. After he unlocked the chains, Castro walked out of the pink room and returned just a few seconds later. This time when Castro came into the room that he had Michelle in, he had Amanda Berry standing right beside of him. When Amanda walked into the pink room that Michelle had been moved to, she saw that Michelle was completely naked, so Castro had kept Michelle naked for weeks, if not months at this point. And as Amanda walked into the pink room, Michelle tried pulling the small thin sheet covered in holes over her naked body. And as Michelle's trying to cover up her naked body, Castro introduces Michelle to Amanda. But instead of saying, "Amanda, this is Michelle. Michelle, this is Amanda, my new captive." No, he didn't just say that. Instead, Castro tried telling Michelle that Amanda was his brother's girlfriend. And naturally, Michelle knew that Amanda was not Castro's brother's girlfriend, and she knew that she was Amanda Berry. But she also knew that everyone in Cleveland had been looking for Amanda. So before we get any further into this timeline, let's jump back just a little bit. Let's go back to the day that Amanda was abducted. It was April 21st of 2003, and it was the day after Easter. Amanda had woken up at about 12 p.m. that day, and the very next day, on April 22nd, was Amanda's 17th birthday. And since Amanda's birthday was the next day, she had kind of debated whether or not she should call into work and kind of start celebrating early. Amanda worked at a Burger King nearby, and she lived in the upper part of a duplex with her mom. Now, Amanda was completely and utterly obsessed with Eminem, which, same girl, same. I'm gonna make him my baby daddy one of these days. But let's keep going. Amanda's older sister, Beth, lived in the downstairs part of the same duplex that Amanda lived in with their mom. Amanda's sister, Beth, lived in this duplex with her husband, Teddy, and their kids. But on this day, Amanda's sister, Beth, and her husband, Teddy, had gotten into some sort of, marital argument, and Beth was pissed. But Teddy was also the manager at the Burger King where Amanda worked. So this made calling out of work for a fake sick day to start an early birthday celebration a little bit harder than it normally would be. So calling out of work wasn't really an option, and Amanda's mom, Luana, and her sister, Beth, had both already left for work that afternoon. Amanda's dad lived in Tennessee. So Amanda laid in her bed, and she was blasting Eminem before she got up to take a shower and to start getting ready for work. Amanda had started working at this Burger King the year prior, and she had already gotten a raise. And with the extra money, Amanda would do things like help her mom buy her school supplies and books, and she would also try to help her mom in any way that she could by buying small things that they needed around the house. So Amanda was that kind of kid, which always amazes me when you hear of a teenager that isn't little Satan spawn. But Amanda was the complete opposite of a little Satan spawn. She didn't mind helping her mom buy dish liquid or toilet paper, and as Amanda lay in bed listening to The Sexiest Man Alive, she figured that she would rather work the day before her birthday than on her actual birthday. And she was only scheduled to work from 4 p.m. to 8 p.m., so she figured, why not? As she showered and got dressed for her shift, Amanda was going to work with plans to splurge on herself the following day for her birthday. She had planned to get her nails done and buy herself a new outfit as a way to celebrate. And Amanda had been stashing away small amounts of money at a time that she kept in a pink glittery box in her bra and underwear drawer. And she had saved up $100 so far, so she was planning to use that money to buy the new outfit and to get her nails done. Amanda left her house and started walking the 10 minutes to Burger King for her shift. And she made it to work right at 4 o'clock. Amanda was set to work the drive-thru window that night, so she would take orders through the speaker outside and then take the money for the orders before sending the cars to the next window to collect their food. And she did this for a while, but at around 7:15, the manager tells Amanda that since they aren't busy, that she can go ahead and clock out if she wants to. And of course she does. Amanda clocks out and she calls her boyfriend DJ on her cell phone to see if he could come and get her from work. And this was 2003, so cell phones were around, but not everyone had one. Now, Amanda and DJ had only been dating for about a month, and Amanda was hoping that since she was able to get off early, that maybe she'd be able to see DJ that night. Amanda and DJ had met when she had taken his order at the front counter of the Burger King, which is such a teenage thing to meet someone while they order a Whopper and then start dating them. So Amanda tried calling DJ for a second time, but still got no answer. And Amanda rarely ever walked home from work when she worked the night shift. Her mom, Luana, didn't want Amanda walking home at night by herself, so normally Amanda's older sister, Beth, would pick her up from work and take her home. And this was just really easy since they all lived in the same duplex. But this night was a little different. Amanda's mom and sister were both still at work, and DJ wasn't answering her calls. So this left Amanda with only one option: to walk home. And she figured it was only a 10-minute walk, and she did normally walk herself to work, so she figured it would be fine. And as Amanda walked in the direction of her house, her sister Beth called to tell her that her and their mom were off of work now. Amanda tells Beth not to worry about it, that she had gotten off a little bit early, and she just lets them know that she'd already started walking home. Amanda was still on the phone with her sister Beth when she saw a maroon-colored van just ahead of her. This van was turned into a driveway, but it wasn't pulled all the way into the driveway. And Amanda was still on the phone, so she noticed the van, but she wasn't really paying it much attention. She walked around the front of the van in order to get by to keep walking home. And as she walked around the front of the van, she noticed that there was a girl in the front passenger seat of the van, and she thought that this girl in the passenger seat was a girl that used to work at Burger King with her. Amanda also sees a man sitting in the driver's seat, and she figures that this must have been that girl's dad. The driver smiled at Amanda, so she returned a polite half smile and she kept walking. And it was only a few short minutes later that the same van pulled up alongside Amanda, and the man asked if she needed a ride. Now, the street lights had already come on, so Amanda can see that she does recognize this man's face, but she can't really place where she knows him from. She knows that he looked familiar to her, though. And Amanda was only 5 minutes away from her house at this point, so she tells the man driving, sure, she'll take a ride. Amanda had still been on the phone with her sister Beth when she said sure and after she accepted the ride, but she kind of rushed to get off the phone, and she tells her sister that she had found a ride home before she ends the call. Amanda had already ended the call with her sister Beth by the time she got into the van, but as soon as she got inside the van, Amanda noticed that the girl that she had seen in the passenger seat just a few minutes before this was gone. The man pulls off in the van with Amanda riding shotgun, and Amanda asks where his daughter was. The man didn't really answer. Instead, he asked Amanda if she worked at Burger King, which she thought was weird, until she realized that she was still in her Burger King uniform with her name tag still attached. So that explained how he knew her name and how he knew where she worked. But that didn't stop the weird feeling that Amanda started to get in her stomach, but the man seemed nice enough so far. The man driving tells Amanda that his son Anthony Castro used to work at that same Burger King. And that's when Amanda realized that that's why the man driving the van had looked so familiar. He was Anthony's dad, Ariel Castro. And Amanda and her mom, Luana, both knew Anthony Castro, and that's when Amanda realized that she also knew his daughter, Angie Castro. So knowing two of Castro's kids made Amanda feel more comfortable and less tense about accepting a ride from him. Amanda made small talk by asking Castro how Angie was doing, and he explained that Angie was doing really good and that she was actually at his house hanging out right now. Castro asked Amanda if she wanted to go to his house and hang out with Angie for a little bit, and Amanda figured she hadn't seen Angie in ages, so why not go hang out with an old friend? So she agrees. This is when the maroon van started heading away from Amanda's house and towards Castro's house. Castro tells Amanda that he really likes her phone, and she explains how she had only had that cell phone for about a week and that she had bought it from a girl that she worked with. The two took a few more turns before they turned onto Seymour Avenue, but when they got to Seymour Avenue, Amanda realized that she knew where she was. A few of Amanda's cousins lived in the same neighborhood as Castro. Castro and Amanda pull into the driveway at 2207 Seymour Avenue, the same two-story white house that Michelle had been driven into the driveway of months before this. Once Amanda and Castro get parked and in the driveway, Amanda sees a chow outside on a chain. And when she notices the dog, Castro tells Amanda again that he really likes her phone and he asks if he can look at it for a minute. After Amanda hands her phone over to Castro, he casually just tells her that he's going to get the dog and hold the dog since the dog would be able to reach the door of the van from where he had parked. So Castro gets out of the van with Amanda's phone still in his hand. She's not even really thinking much about that. Castro tells Amanda that Angie's inside the house and that she can go ahead and go inside. The two walk onto the back porch and Castro unlocks the back door. As Amanda follows him into the kitchen, he points out a small bathroom, and he tells Amanda that Angie must be in that bathroom taking a bath. So Castro volunteers to show Amanda around the house while they wait on Angie to get out of the bath, and Amanda agrees. And she looks around and she notices a few family pictures, the trash that was scattered all over the house, and then she sees these two huge speakers. She said that these speakers were easily 4 foot tall. Amanda notices that Castro's already halfway up the stairs as she looked around, and he kind of waves her up the steps and tells her that he wants to show her the upstairs. And Amanda can tell from where she's standing that it's pretty dark up the stairs, but she also doesn't want to seem rude, so she follows behind him as they go up the stairs together. Once they get upstairs, Amanda can see that some of the bedroom doors are all shut, but Castro pointed out one bedroom door in particular. Castro told Amanda that his roommate stayed in that bedroom and that she was probably sleeping. He then points to the hole where the doorknob should be and tells Amanda to look inside. Amanda said that she could see that there was a TV that was on and that there was a girl sleeping in front of the TV. Castro and Amanda walked into a few more bedrooms, and the last bedroom that they walked into, when Amanda turned around to leave, Castro blocked the doorway and tells Amanda, quote, "Pull your pants down." This is the exact moment when Amanda started to freak out. But at this point, Amanda still believes that her friend and Castro's daughter, Angie, is just right downstairs in the tub. Amanda takes a few seconds to look at Castro to kind of study his face and judge his level of seriousness. But then Castro orders Amanda to take her pants off again. But when Amanda looked at Castro again this time, she saw that his entire demeanor had changed. He didn't look like her friend's sweet, normal dad anymore. He looked terrifying. Amanda can sense that she's in danger, and she does exactly as she's told. She pulled her pants down while Castro masturbated as he looked Amanda up and down. Castro then threatens Amanda, telling her that if she makes a noise, that he will hurt her. He tries to hurry to finish pleasing himself, and he pulls his pants back up. After this, Castro's voice went straight back into normal dad mode. He then tells Amanda to put her pants back on so that he can take her home. And Amanda recalled praying to God to just get her out of this situation. Amanda goes again to walk towards the door of this bedroom when Castro turned back around to face Amanda. But this time when Castro spoke, he tells Amanda to turn around and to get on the bed and to take her pants off again. Amanda screams at Castro, telling him that she's not scared of him before she threatens to call the police and report him. This is the moment when Amanda realized that Castro had never given her cell phone back after he'd asked to use it. And Amanda kind of silently wonders to herself why Castro's roommate can't hear her screaming for help and why she hasn't busted the door down to come and see what the noise was. Amanda tried to escape Castro by running into a small room that she thought was a bedroom, but as she got inside of this room, she realized that it wasn't a bedroom, it was just a closet. So now she was stuck inside of this small closet, which, of course, gave Castro the upper hand. He then threw Amanda down on the closest bed where he raped her. And again, for whatever reason, Castro told Amanda to get up and get dressed, again telling her to get dressed so that he could take her home. Except this time, Amanda knew that this was a lie, and she was completely mortified. Castro must have seen all of the emotions all over Amanda's face, because he tried telling her that he was only going to duct tape her mouth closed so that she didn't scream anymore until he takes her home. Castro then wraps duct tape around Amanda's hands, wrists, and ankles, binding all of them together before he pulls off his leather belt. Castro then wraps the leather belt around Amanda's ankles, essentially tying them together. Once Castro had Amanda's mouth, wrists, and ankles tied together, he pulled out a motorcycle helmet from the closest closet to them, and he shoved it onto Amanda's head. Amanda recalled how her tears had fogged up the lens of the helmet and that she couldn't see anything now. But Castro then picked up Amanda's entire body and threw it over his shoulder. Amanda could feel that she was being carried back down the steps to the first floor of the house. And she could feel once they had gone off the second floor and onto the first. And then it kind of felt like Castro was walking around the first floor of the house. And again, Amanda still slung over Castro's shoulder. But after he paced around on what Amanda thought was the first floor a few times, she felt as if she were being carried down another flight of steps. And she was correct. Castro had carried Amanda over his shoulder down into the basement. He then sat Amanda down next to this same massive pole that he had had Michelle chained up to, where he used those same massive chains that he'd used on Michelle's body to chain her body to the pole in the basement. Castro sat a tiny stool type of seat down and then sat a small black and white TV on top of the stool. This was the TV that Castro had given Michelle in place of the small color TV that he had taken from her. Castro turned the lights in the basement on and told Amanda not to move and not to make a noise. Amanda looked around the basement where she saw the same boxes, chains, tools, and food wrappers that Michelle had seen. Castro chained Amanda to the pole and left the basement. Amanda was somehow able to get the tape off of her mouth, and when she did, she screamed, she yelled, and she hoped that someone would hear her and that someone would help her. She was able to chew away at the tape that was wrapped around her wrist, but that felt like it was taking forever, and only small chunks of the tape were coming undone at a time. Amanda was able to free her hands and her wrists from the tape, but by the time that she got the tape off of her wrist, her nails were broken and bleeding. Hell, Amanda was even able to get the leather belt and the tape off of her ankles too, but the chains were still wrapped around her body and still chained to the pole. Amanda tried everything that she could possibly think of to get herself out of these chains. She'd even tried to wiggle her body out of her blue jeans in hopes that the jeans would be thick enough to give her just enough room to wiggle and be able to squirm free. But she wasn't able to get the jeans off. They were too thick, and her body was in a very awkward position, making taking the jeans off damn near impossible. And Amanda was still screaming as she was doing all of this, and she knew that she had been fighting with those chains for at least a few hours because she remembered that quite a few different TV show episodes had already played through. And it was hours later when Amanda's body just couldn't fight anymore. She remembered finally falling asleep to the sound of the TV show Cops playing in the background. She slept against the pole until she heard footsteps coming down the stairs, which woke her up. Once she woke up, Castro stood in front of Amanda and told her that he had warned her already about trying to escape. And Amanda said that the way that he said this was chilling. It sounded like such a normal, nice voice, but was very obviously a threatening sentence. Castro told Amanda that he had gotten them breakfast, that they were going to go upstairs and take a shower before they ate. And Amanda could see that he was holding a bag from Burger King, and chances are, it was the same Burger King that she had been working at. That would have been the closest Burger King to his house. Castro unlocked the chains that were wrapped around Amanda's body, and he helped her to her feet. And I just want to point out here that Castro hadn't let Michelle shower until she had been there for like 8 months. I'm going to go ahead and mention it here. Michelle seemed to be Castro's least favorite of all 3 of the women that he held captive. It was like he got real, actual joy and pleasure from beating, starving, and torturing Michelle. And in my opinion, Michelle got the brunt of his rage and anger because she was older than what he had originally thought, and that pissed him off. And obviously, all 3 of these women endured pure hell in this house, no questions asked. But Michelle seemed to be Castro's very own personal punching bag. But back to the basement. Castro had unlocked Amanda's chains and had walked her up the basement steps. When he got upstairs, he pointed to a bathroom and he ordered Amanda to get undressed. Castro took a washcloth and he wet it, and he started washing Amanda's face for her. He was wiping the sticky residue from the tape off of her face. And he did this as if he were wiping off the face of a 2-year-old. Castro then forced Amanda to get in the shower with him, where he washed her hair for her and spoke to her in the calmest, most unassuming voice. It sounded nothing like the monster that he had sounded like before. And Amanda said that during this shower, that she had never felt more disgusting in her entire life. She was completely disgusted by Castro, and even more so every time he used his hands to touch her naked body. After the shower, Castro patched up Amanda's fingers from where they had been bleeding. He tossed her a pair of jogging pants and a shirt that was 3 times too big for her, and he told her to get dressed. Castro made Amanda walk with him into the living room area, where he made her sit down on the couch and watch TV. Castro handed Amanda a cold breakfast sandwich from Burger King, and while Amanda ate, he just kind of talked and chatted as if he were like catching up with an old friend. And Amanda tried to just block everything that he said out, until she heard him say that it was time for them to go upstairs. After Castro got Amanda upstairs, he walked her into one of the upstairs bedrooms and he raped her again on a dirty mattress. Afterwards, he just laid in the bed with Amanda sleeping, and once he woke up, he told Amanda that it was time to go back down into the basement. Castro walked Amanda back down into the basement and chained her to the same massive pole. And it wasn't until Amanda was sitting in the dark, alone, in this dirty-ass basement, that she had come to the realization that today was her birthday. She had to spend her birthday in this disgusting house with this man who was holding her captive. Amanda stayed in the basement for a few days before Castro came down and walked Amanda back upstairs. When he did, he chained her to a radiator in a separate room from where Michelle was chained up at. But the way that Amanda was chained to the radiator in this room made it super awkward for her to be able to lay down. She was basically having to lay and sleep on chains and padlocks all day long. Her body was covered in bruises from the chains and the locks, and Amanda wasn't given a 5-gallon bucket to use the restroom in. Instead, Castro had brought in a beige trash can, and the top of this makeshift toilet was covered with a plastic grocery bag, because that'll really hide the smell. And he'd done Amanda the same way that he'd done Michelle. He had both women chained in a way that they could barely move and could only barely reach their makeshift toilets. He also made sure that neither woman could reach any of the light switches, blinds, curtains, windows, etc. Castro even told Amanda at one point that he had her chained so tightly so that she couldn't reach the light switches to be able to flip the lights off and on to try to signal to someone outside that she was in there. And Amanda says that this was the first time that she realized how much thought Castro had actually put into his plan. He had thought of damn near every way that these women would be able to signal someone on the outside for help, and he made sure to prevent that. Amanda says in her book Hope that Castro was an extremely paranoid person, that he was constantly looking outside and always checking out the windows through the curtains and blinds. She even said that Castro had a mannequin doll that had a wig on it, and Castro told Amanda that he would stand this mannequin at the kitchen sink while he was gone. That way, if someone was scoping out the house to try to break in, they would think someone was always home. Now, Amanda says that she had screamed so much and so loudly on the first night in the basement that she completely lost her voice, and still no one heard her. So she figured that screaming was probably pointless. And now that Amanda was upstairs, Castro would always leave those speakers blaring in the hallway between the two separate bedrooms that the women were in when he would leave the house for work. It was on Amanda's 4th day in captivity that Castro asked Amanda if she wanted to go downstairs with him and watch TV. And of course, Amanda didn't want to do anything with Castro at all, but she figured that watching TV downstairs beat sitting on chains and padlocks. Once Castro walked Amanda downstairs and into the living room, she saw that her face was being plastered all over every news station and outlet. And Castro flipped through all of the news stations to show Amanda that she was, in fact, on all of them. She was forced to sit beside her captor and watch as her mom and her sister cried as they told the news reporters that they just wanted Amanda back home with them, safe and sound. Amanda watched Castro's facial expressions as he glared at the TV, and she said that it looked as if he were proud of himself. This seemed to be what made Castro feel important. Castro was raping Amanda multiple times a day, just like he had done with Michelle, and Amanda was only eating one time a day when he decided to feed her, just like Michelle. But Amanda learned pretty quickly that the less she fought with him during these attacks, the faster he would finish and get off of her. So she says in her book, Hope, that by her 6th day in captivity, that she had been raped by Castro at least 25 times. And it was on this 6th day in captivity that Castro asked Amanda if she wanted anything from the store to try to help pass the time. So she asked for a notebook and pencils. And God, was she smart. So smart. Amanda would use these notebooks to keep track of damn near everything that happened to her during her time in captivity. And she did this in a way that was extremely smart, because she wrote everything down in a way that seemed unassuming, and it was almost like a code that only she would understand. At the top of every page in this notebook was a number with an X beside of it, and we would later find out that this number represented the number of times in that day that Castro had raped her. And when Amanda would run out of notebook paper, she would use anything she could find. She used fast food napkins, scrap pieces of paper, food wrappers, and even fast food bags that the food comes in. Amanda figured if Castro did ever go through the journal or notebook and try to read it, that there was a different number with an X beside it on almost every page. It seemed that a lot of the numbers were just random. So she hoped that he wouldn't put this together and she would be able to keep track of it. And she would write on anything that she could get her hands on. She used these notebooks and scrap pieces of paper as a diary. Amanda's very first entry was dated as April 27th, 2003, which was a Sunday. And it was the end of her first week of many living in this house of hell. Now, Castro had told Michelle that he would let her go at Christmas. And he had told Amanda that he would let her go sometime in the summer months, even telling her that he may let her go sometime at the end of July. Amanda remembered hearing Eminem's newest song blasting on the speakers one day when Castro turned the speakers on as he left for work. The song, Sing for the Moment, had just been released. Amanda listened, and she recalled how crazy she thought it was that the chorus from the song Dream On was also in the song Sing for the Moment, because Dream On was Amanda's mom's favorite song, and Eminem was Amanda's favorite artist. And Amanda thought a lot about her family and friends during the early parts of her captivity, And she even says that she thought about how much she missed her mom yelling at her to telling her to turn her music down, or about how badly she'd give anything to have her mom fussing at her about doing the dishes. Both Michelle and Amanda say they would have to try their absolute best to remove themselves during the beatings and the rapes. Michelle thought about Joey during these times, and Amanda looked at pictures of her family. Amanda had pictures of her family in her purse when she was taken, and she used chewed bubble gum that she'd gotten out of the trash to be able to stick these pictures on the wall. And these thoughts and pictures were the closest things that Amanda and Michelle had to use as an escape. Amanda later says that the pictures of her family hanging on the wall helped her get through most of the sexual assaults, and that they were the only reason that she fought so hard to stay alive. It was on April 28th that Amanda saw her mom, Luana, on the news again. This time, Luana was showing the news reporters Amanda's bedroom. Amanda's mom explained to the news reporter that if Amanda were going to run away, that she would have taken the saved up $100 that she had with her, which makes sense. She also explained that Amanda hadn't taken any of her favorite clothes, none of her shoes, or any of her accessories. Luana knew that Amanda was very much a fashionista, and Luana also knew that Amanda wasn't running away to go anywhere without her favorite things. Luana tells the reporter that Amanda wasn't a quote-unquote runaway type of kid, and she was right. Amanda remembered a night that Castro came into the room that she was chained up in, and he was holding her cell phone. Amanda was speechless when Castro told her that he had used her phone to call her mom, Luana. You heard me right. Castro used Amanda's own phone to call her mom. Now, when he called Amanda's mom, Luana, he told her that, quote-unquote, Mandy was his wife now, that she was happy with him, that she wanted to be with him, and that Amanda was choosing to stay with him, which could not have been further from the truth. But oddly enough, the same night that Castro brought Amanda's phone into the room that he had her chained up in, he also let Amanda listen to some of her voicemails that had accumulated since he had taken her. And as far as this call that Castro made to Amanda's mom goes, the police did try to trace the call, but they were only able to trace the call if the phone was on. And of course, Castro always made sure that the phone stayed off. And for the first 2 or 3 months that Amanda was in captivity, Castro would let her listen to the voicemails on her phone, and he did this a few different times. Police were never able to trace exactly where the phone was pinging from. They were able to get within a few blocks radius of where it had been used, but not close enough to know the exact address that the call had come from. On April 30th, Castro took Amanda downstairs to the small bathroom again. He let Amanda brush her teeth, and Amanda was allowed to take a shower. And while Amanda was allowed to take a shower a lot more frequently than Michelle, Castro always got in the shower with Amanda. But he did a lot of weird things with Amanda, though. Like, he would try to hold her hand, and he would even call her his temporary wife. Amanda, like Michelle, said that she contemplated suicide often, and while Michelle had to think about Joey, Amanda knew that if she took her own life, that would just mean that Castro had won. And Amanda absolutely refused to let him win. In her book, Amanda wrote about how she would use the smallest, tiniest things to keep her going, and about how she made sure to write everything that was happening to her down. In her book, Hope, Amanda says that she wrote everything down because she wanted Castro to be held accountable for every single time he raped her, every single time he hit her. She just wanted him to be held accountable, and she wanted it all documented so that she could tell everyone if she was ever able to escape him. Amanda found a penny in a pair of Castro's old sweatpants once, and she kept the penny, calling it her lucky penny. On another page, Amanda wrote about how the water from the shower had felt on her skin that day. Of course, Castro was also in the shower with her, as per usual. And on the days that Eminem would come on the radio, it made Amanda's day just a little bit brighter. These are the little things, the small things that kept Amanda going. Castro came into the room that he had Amanda chained up in on the first day of May, and he asked her to help do his laundry. After this, Castro would get Amanda to do chores around the house pretty often. And we're able to know when exactly everything happened to Amanda because Castro had given her a notebook on her 5th or 6th day in the house. So it was much easier for Amanda to know what day it was and how long she'd been there and to keep up with what was going on. versus Michelle having no sense of time and having no idea how long she'd been there. Amanda had been there for 10 days when Castro came in and asked her to help with his laundry. But instead of Castro walking Amanda straight to the washing machine, he instead pointed over to the door that he had told her that his roommate stayed in, and he told Amanda that they needed to clean that bedroom up, nodding with his head towards the room that Michelle was chained up in. And this whole time, Amanda had been so curious about the woman that she had seen sleeping when Castro was giving her the house tour before she realized that she was in danger. And Amanda wondered if this woman was also there against her will. And she says that she even thought about screaming across the hallway to the room that she'd seen the sleeping woman in. But Amanda and Michelle both reported that Castro would pretend to leave, only to sneak back upstairs to see if they were trying to escape or to draw attention from someone outside. But Amanda was worried about screaming across the hallway in case Castro was quote-unquote testing her to see if he could trust her by pretending to leave and coming back. So every time that Amanda thought about screaming across the hallway for help, she wondered if Castro was actually gone or if he was just standing on the other side of the door listening to see if she would scream for help. And these are the kinds of quote-unquote tests that Castro would give to all the women during their time in captivity. And aside from all of that, Amanda also had no idea of knowing if the sleeping woman across the hallway knew what Castro was doing. She didn't know if this was something that Castro and this sleeping woman did together as like a twisted game of playing house, or if the sleeping woman had also been taken and chained against her will. Amanda did think about this often, though. Like, was this sleeping woman also a victim? Or was she some kind of silent accomplice of Castro's? And Amanda didn't know it then, but she was finally about to meet the sleeping woman. Castro came into Amanda's room, he unlocked her chains, and he told her to come with him. The two walked across the hallway, and Castro unlocked another one of the bedroom doors. When he pushed the door open, he handed Amanda a trash bag and ordered her to start picking up all the trash. And this was the first time that Michelle and Amanda saw each other. Amanda said in her book that Michelle was tiny, and that by the way Michelle was sitting, she couldn't tell if she was chained up or not. But chains or no chains, Amanda could clearly see that Michelle was also Castro's victim. She could see the fear in Michelle's eyes when Castro opened the door, and Amanda just silently wondered how long Michelle had been there. Amanda noticed that Michelle had a small TV in front of her, and she wondered if maybe Michelle had seen her picture all over the news. She wondered if Michelle had seen Amanda's mom and sister pleading to the public for her safe return. She wondered if Michelle recognized her from the news coverage, and she did. Michelle knew exactly who Amanda Berry was. But Michelle had known since the very first time that Amanda's missing persons flyer flashed across her small TV screen that Castro had been the one that had taken her. Amanda did as she was told, and she filled the trash bag with the trash laying around the room, and as quickly as they had met, Castro was locking the door behind him and forcing Amanda back out of the bedroom that Michelle was in. Castro ordered Amanda back down into the basement where he pointed to a huge pile of dirty laundry, and he told Amanda to start throwing things in the washing machine. Amanda says that during this trip to the basement, that out of all of the junk, all of the trash, all of the old food laying around in the basement, that she'd noticed a picture of Jesus. Amanda said that it felt like Jesus' eyes in that picture could see straight through her every time she glanced over at it. So Amanda finally decides to ask Castro if she can have this picture of Jesus, and he tells her sure, why not? So now in the room where Amanda was chained up, she would have a picture of her mom on her nightstand, a picture of Jesus looking at her, and right below the picture of Jesus sat her tiny TV with bunny ears. Amanda watched the TV and the news reports about her disappearance, and she saw that the FBI was now offering a $10,000 reward for any information leading to her safe return. So she at least knew now that people were still looking for her. And she even hoped that the money would give someone incentive to come forward and say that they saw her get into Castro's van that night. But at the same time, though, Amanda's boyfriend DJ was the prime suspect in her disappearance. Police had already searched his vehicle and questioned him, and Amanda's mom, Luana, had even shown up to his house, beating on his door, because she thought that he was a troubled kid, and she didn't trust him as far as she could throw him. During the first few months of Amanda's time in captivity, Castro would also take Michelle downstairs every once in a while. Every once in a blue moon, he would take her downstairs. But he would only ever take her downstairs to show her that Amanda's mom and sister were crying and pleading with the public for somebody to come forward with information. Castro did this every chance he got. He rubbed it into Michelle that Amanda's family would never stop looking for her and that Amanda's family would never let her be forgotten about, just to be able to remind Michelle that absolutely no one was looking for her. Michelle says that every time he would do this, she could feel a lump forming in her throat and she felt like crying, but that after a straight year of crying that she figured that her body had probably just run out of tears at this point. And it wasn't very long after Michelle knew for sure that Amanda was in the house that she started waking up feeling nauseated and not being able to keep the little bit of food that Castro would bring her down. She noticed that her breasts were tender to the touch, and she had felt this exact same way when she had been pregnant with Joey. But Michelle had no way of knowing how Castro would react to finding out that she was pregnant. So instead, Michelle tried to hide the pools of vomit, and for the first time, Michelle hoped that that room that she was chained up in was nasty enough that Castro wouldn't notice the vomit or the smell. Michelle later says in her book that she realizes how this must sound now, but that at the time, she missed Joey so much that she actually thought she wanted another baby, even under these circumstances. She didn't have her dog Lobo anymore, and she just wanted something to love that would love her back. And it didn't even matter that her baby's father was the devil himself. Michelle also noticed that Castro was coming into the room that he had her chained up in a lot more often after he'd abducted Amanda. Castro would even come into the room that he had Michelle chained up in, and he would tell Michelle that Amanda didn't feel like having sex with him. Even though it's not sex if it's rape. Let's continue. But he would tell her that since Amanda didn't want to have sex with him, that Michelle would have to do it. And Michelle said that as much as she hated it, that she was glad that Amanda was fighting him off and telling him no. And Michelle didn't know what was happening to Amanda for telling Castro no, or if anything at all was happening when she said no, because the two women never got to speak to each other in the beginning. But since Amanda was telling Castro no, and since he was at least somewhat listening to Amanda when she did say no, Michelle underwent a lot more sexual assaults during this time. And I'm almost positive that Castro didn't listen to Amanda every time she told him no, but Michelle was proud of Amanda for even having the courage to tell him no. And Castro would tell Michelle that he didn't want to make her do things that she didn't want to do, and that he didn't want to make her cry, but he always said this in reference to Amanda. And Michelle wondered why it was okay to make her cry, but it wasn't okay for him to make Amanda cry. Michelle also wondered a lot about the differences in the way that the two women were treated. Like, why did Amanda get the better TV, and why did he sometimes listen to Amanda when she told him no? And even Amanda herself says that Castro was more lenient with her than he was with the other two women. But Michelle never blamed Amanda for any of this. She knew that Castro was just a sick, sick man, and that only he could justify why he did the things that he did. But it could have been something as simple as Castro's obsession with blondes. Amanda was a blonde, and she was younger than Michelle, and that was just the way that he liked it. And all of the women agreed that Castro had an unhealthy obsession with breast. One night during a rape, Castro was biting and sucking on Michelle's nipples, and he noticed that Michelle was lactating. Michelle said that Castro jumped up and he screamed at her, saying, "You must be pregnant, you little slut." Castro was pissed, and he was so mad, in fact, that he stopped the sexual assault on Michelle midway through raping her. Michelle said that she knew that it was going to be bad, but Castro starved Michelle for weeks and weeks in an attempt to try to make her miscarry. And he'd already only fed both women once a day when he did feed them. And he was still coming into the room that he had Michelle chained up in multiple times a day for sexual assaults, all while he was withholding food from her. Eventually, after weeks of this, Castro decided that starving Michelle wasn't going to work. He came into the bedroom that he had Michelle chained up in one night, and he was holding a barbell. Castro dragged Michelle's tiny body down the stairs, but this time, Michelle did put up a fight. She was fighting for this baby, just like she had fought for Joey. Castro pushed and pulled and jerked Michelle up to her feet before he swung the barbell into her stomach. Michelle later said that she screamed so loud that the entire neighborhood should have been able to hear her. But of course, yet again, no one heard anything. Michelle screamed at Castro, telling him how much she hated him, and he just shot her a disgusted look and told Michelle that it, quote, better be gone by tomorrow. Castro drugged Michelle back to the bedroom and chained her back up to the radiator. Michelle was bleeding between her legs, and there was an excruciating pain in her stomach. She tried using the only thin sheet that she had to stop the bleeding, but there was just too much blood. And then in the early morning hours, just as the sun was rising, Michelle had woken up, and her stomach pain was still unbearable, but now what had felt like really intense cramps before felt like full-blown labor pains. Shortly after this, a tiny premature fetus slid out of Michelle, and she later said that this was easily the most horrific thing that she had ever gone through or witnessed. And Michelle had already gone through so much in her life before she was abducted. But she went through this completely alone, in a filthy room, chained to a radiator, living through a literal living hell. And I think that's where I have to call it quits today. This case drains me emotionally and mentally. And this week we went over a lot of really dark stuff, really hard stuff. So I'm probably going to need the entire rest of the week to recuperate. But before I forget, I want to start doing a review of the week where I choose a review that someone has left for the podcast and I read it here for you. So if you haven't already, please be sure to go to Apple Podcast and leave a review there. And I know that you can't leave a review on Spotify, but you can leave a rating of 1 through 5 stars. So if you do use Spotify, just be sure to rate the podcast with the 1 through 5 stars. Preferably 5 stars, because a 1 star would really hurt my feelings. Thank you so much for being supportive. I'm sorry that I'm late. Business owner wife stuff came up, and that has to be handled ASAP. Now on to the review of the week. This review comes from username Scrub Mama, and the caption is The Bee's Knees. If you haven't listened to this podcast, then drop what you're doing and listen. It's like a Southern Bailey Sarian. I love listening while I'm cleaning or driving or really anytime. I absolutely love this podcast. I look forward to it, and it's the highlight of my week. No, you're the highlight of my week, Scrub Mama. I love you all. Go leave me a review. I'll read it here next week. Let's do it again then. Same time, same place, next Wednesday. See you then.
That's how my mama murdered a podcast.